What's good, YouTube? We're back here to look ahead to the MLS Week 26 slate this coming Wednesday. Another packed 14-game slate, and we're coming off this past weekend's 14-game slate as well with Week 25. And it was a crazy, crazy, unexpected weekend of results. We had all top three teams in the West losing, and the top team in the East losing as well. And we'll start there with Cincinnati, who's leading the Supporters' Shield race as of now. But it was a big slip up, and they haven't been perfect at home specifically, but they've also been in a lot of high scoring games recently because of their center back issues. They have a couple center backs out for the year. Miles Robinson came back for like one game, and now he's off to the Olympic training camp and will be gone for about another month or so. And so they're very thin back there, and they lost 3-1 to Charlotte this past weekend. And Charlotte, who's been known obviously for their amazing defense, especially at home, but definitely not for their offensive prowess, especially on the road. And they go in there and win 3-1 in Cincy. And that's why, for me, in my opinion, I don't think Cincy's going to be one of those top three teams when it comes down to it at the end of the season for this Shield, because it's good for the neutral. They've been in a lot of high-scoring games, but it's just unsustainable when it comes to a Shield race. And in terms of the Eastern standings, I think they'll be completely fine getting one of those top four spots for the home field. But I just think there's other teams that are definitely set for huge runs in this last portion of the season, and they have just too much to deal with, especially with those defensive issues. But let's move over to the West, where the Galaxy went to Texas once again and got shut out. Last time they went to Austin earlier in the year. I think that was 2 or 3-0 for Austin, and they were coming off an El Tráfico loss. They then went back home and beat Minnesota, and then they had to travel midweek, but they were without Jovic. It's funny how that works. Both times they've been traveling to Texas this year, they've been without their top striker, and they've had to rely on either Miguel Berry in that first game, and then this past weekend they actually made Painsil the number 9. And respect, they're trying to switch things up, especially if your top striker's out, but it just didn't work. And yeah, Dallas, who was on very short rest because they played in the Open Cup the other midweek, and then they had to remain at Kansas City the past weekend. They got the job done. Peter Moose is on fire for them, and yeah, but then we had Real Salt Lake, who was looking really, really good. They had scored 8 goals in their past 2 games at home with back-to-back wins after ending their 15-match unbeaten run with a loss to the Galaxy. And they had to travel to Portland, which isn't far, but Portland's been hot as well, and they lost 3-0. I'm just shocked that they couldn't find anything going offensively, because Portland's obviously had their own struggles at the back. They've been in a lot of high-scoring games themselves. And yeah, they still didn't have Crépeau and Miller for this one. Their keeper and one of their better center backs. So that was very surprising, not just the result, but that RSL couldn't find the back of the net. And then we had LAFC losing to in probably the on paper the game of the year in the MLS Cup final rematch. They lost to the Crew 5-1. They got completely embarrassed, and Chicho with maybe the goal of the year so far, just an unbelievable strike, curler from the right to the left, outside the box. Like the levels were shown in that game. I mean, that for me, that's what I wanted to get to as well when I mentioned Cincy not being that top supporter shield race contender as it gets down to the wire. I think the Crew are just right there. They have 2 less games played than Cincy, who are obviously first in the shield standings, and they're 6 points behind them. So if they win, those are going to be tied on it, and I fully expect them to. Who is going to stop this team? They're not missing a beat even with Morris out. And they have a couple signings coming in. Once this transfer window opens, just more replacements. Nancy is just easily the best coach in MLS. And, besides like Tata, but they're just pulling off win after win. It doesn't matter. They're going to be on short rest, though. They're going to have to travel back from LA for that game back to the Crew to face now Charlotte, who's obviously looking good, and they get to stay in Ohio, even though they're on the road trip. They don't have to travel very far between Cincy and Columbus. But also a shout out to the Cascadia teams. All 3 teams have really, really picked it up recently. We have the Timbers, Whitecaps, and Sounders in 5th through 7th in that order in the West. They're really, really heating up. Portland, obviously, like we mentioned, beat RSL, just wipe the floor with them, and especially they've just been really, really hot for them at home. Just scoring goals for fun. Everything's clicking right now. They're really masking some defensive issues, but I mean that's also picked up recently. And yeah, they're all looking good. They're all in those last couple playoff spots before the wild card spots. So props to them. But it's going to be another interesting week here. There's going to be a lot of weather concerns for some of these Midwestern teams that are hosting games and kind of East Coast, Northeast Coast teams with rain and thunderstorms. So that's going to be a big part of how these games go and postponements maybe or delays in those games. And just in general, obviously, everyone's going to be on short rest, only a couple days between these games from Saturday to Wednesday. So there's going to be a lot of rotation involved probably. And we're going to look ahead to all these 14 games on the slate and see what to look out for, who's in and who's out. And yeah, just general storylines. So yeah, let's get into week 26 action. So we got Atlanta taking on NYCFC to start off the slate. And Atlanta 11th, NYC in 5th. Atlanta has 4 losses in a row now, including that Open Cup quarterfinal loss. They just got blanked at at Montreal. And NYCFC, on the other hand, they've been on a bit of a road trip. Their past 2 games have been on the road. They went to Austin and then now Chicago for the weekend. And that was a 0-0 result on the road. And in NYCFC's last 4 road games, including that one, they have no wins. Three losses and that 1 draw to Chicago. So they've also been blanked in 3 out of those last 4. So 2 teams on the best form in terms of the situation. Atlanta's last win before these 4-loss streak was at home, but their home form, they won a couple of home games to start the year, but since then it's been really, really underperforming, and they've obviously lost so many players to the transfer window. They're obviously going to look to revamp because they usually do, but right now nothing's really been solid. And also, Gregerson got a WO at Montreal, probably their best defender. Caleb Wiley's gone for the Olympics, like we talked about in the previous show. And NYCFC as well, they're dealing with some injury issues and suspensions. Sands is out with suspension. Tavon Gray, he got an early knock in that Fire game. Perea out. O'Toole questionable, probably won't go. He's been out for a game or 2, I think. And I think with all these players out, even though both defenses on the numbers-wise have been looking okay, more so NYCFC with Freese in goal. He's been really one of the best keepers all year. I think the potential for goals here is good. No weather concerns, obviously, with the stadium being closed and all that, with the roof. But I'd like Atlanta with the home bump here. And NYCFC has been pretty impressive in terms of their numbers and attacks. And both the score has hit in all 5 of this last matchups. And in the only other matchup this year at NYC was 1-1. So I think there's a good potential for goals here. I like Atlanta's attacking forces, even though it's been kind of stripped down to bare bones. But I think NYCFC actually turns their road form around and squeezes this one out. Atlanta's home form hasn't been convincing at all. So I'm going to say 2-1 to NYC. Moving on to the first of a series of matches this week that are really going to be marred by weather concerns and rain and thunderstorms. We have Columbus taking on Charlotte. Columbus obviously coming off the insane 5-1 statement win at LAFC, and Charlotte coming off their own statement win against Cincinnati. And both these teams looking hot right now. Columbus, since losing to Miami on the road, has won all of their last 5. They look completely comfortable and dominant, like the defending Cup champs should be. And Charlotte has won 3 out of their last 5 road games, and they, like I mentioned before in the other video, even when they've lost this year, it hasn't been by more than 1 goal on the road. So Charlotte gets the benefit, even though they are on a continued road trip, they get the benefit of basically staying in state, right? Because they just had to play at Cincy. Now they play at Columbus. Meanwhile, Columbus has to travel all the way back from LAFC for this midweek game, even though it's a home game. So it's really, honestly, it's really even here for me. And both these teams are top 6 numbers-wise defensively in terms of expected goals allowed. Crew is a top 5 offense. Charlotte obviously looking to have a couple of signings come in and really help the offense click a little bit more, and it'll be on that, higher end, upper echelon type of attack. But they're still looking decent. Agamang's coming back for this after his suspension. And I think with the weather and just how defensively sound both these teams are, this could be a low-scoring one. And I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a tie here, but I'm gonna lean Columbus to squeak out a result and hold a clean sheet. They've been really good with those, especially at home. Charlotte is gonna be a little bit more defensive here, I would imagine. And with the short rest factor of it, I just see Columbus edging this one out in a really competitive game, though. I see 1-0 to the Crew. Another game in Ohio that could be decided by weather and possibly rained out. We have Cincinnati taking on the Fire. Cincinnati obviously coming off that disappointing loss to Charlotte at home, but they get to stay home here. The Fire hosted NYCFC midweek and tied 0-0. Got a valuable point for themselves in the process. Not an exciting game, but a point is a point. And they have to travel here slightly, short travel, but they do have to travel. And this matchup has been pretty electric. The Fire have actually gotten a result here, at least a point here, in 4 of the last 5 times they've traveled to Cincinnati, surprisingly. But the most recent matchup, Cincinnati won 1-0 at home. And also the only other matchup this season, Cincinnati took a 2-1 victory at the Fire. So I think this would have the potential for a lot of goals if it weren't for the weather factor. We'll really have to see how bad it is, because that can just change the whole dynamic of a game and how the field is and all that. If this were normal conditions, I would say Chicago definitely has the capability to score here, because it's not they don't have to travel much, and their attack has been on and off. But I do like their pieces, especially with who Cincinnati is missing. But I think they just shoot themselves in the foot too much. They only have 1 win on the road this season, and 3 draws, 6 losses on the road. So it's obviously not in their favor here, but it's really dependent on the weather. But I'm gonna say Cincinnati bounces back and wins this one 2-1. Next up, Miami hosts Toronto. Miami's still sitting in second in the East, Toronto 8th. And it's really about who comes back for Miami, and I think they should have these replacements back, because these tournaments are done now, and they're going to get Luis Suarez and Matias Rojas back. Suarez really didn't play much with Uruguay at all until the late knockout rounds where he got subbed on late, so he hasn't had that much playing time anyway, so he should be fit here. And Messi actually, obviously, if you haven't heard, is out indefinitely now after picking up a non-contact ankle injury in the final because of a trash field, synthetic grass or whatever it is. It's not real. And so probably in doubt for Leagues Cup 2 now, but we'll see. Not a good sign for them. But regardless, they've been flying without him. Besides that 6-1 thrashing to Cincinnati, they've been okay. And now they get a couple of replacements back. Busquets is actually suspended for this one because he picked up a double yellow at Cincy. And Miami's going to be a little bit more rested here because they didn't play this past weekend. They were the team on the bye, and they get to play at home. Meanwhile, Toronto, coming from home, it's a long trip down to Miami. And before this previous win, they came back against the Union to win 2-1 this past weekend. But before that, there were 6 losses in a row, 7 if you include the Canadian Cup first leg semifinal. And yeah, this offense doesn't convince me. The defensive solidarity has really fallen off since the first couple of weeks of the season. And there's not much more to say here. It should be a pretty simple win for Miami, all things considered. The weather shouldn't be a factor. And the defense is honestly held up. It's still leaking a goal like about every game, but it's not like leaking multiple or, being the liability that it once was. So we'll see how long that can hold up. But it's been respectable. And Toronto really shouldn't offer too many problems. I'm sure Miami can still concede anyone, but they should have no problem getting after it against this really weak Toronto team. So I see 3-1 to Miami at home. Red Bulls get to host Montreal after getting an impressive 1-1 draw on the road to the Rapids, and they are now unbeaten in their last 6 games. 5 draws, though, in that time. They've really become the St. Louis City equivalent in the East of Draw FC. They have 10 draws now, compared to 9 wins, only 4 losses. Meanwhile, Montreal came off a 1-0 win at Atlanta, but the road form has been pretty abysmal. Winless in their last 10, including only 3 draws. So really not even picking up points. But I think the weather with the rain and the people Red Bulls are missing, such as Forsberg, Tolkien, are going to contribute to a little bit tighter game here. This was 2-2 a couple weeks ago, or about a month ago, when these two teams met in Montreal. And Montreal's getting some reinforcements back. They've had some reinforcements back on the offensive end. They're a little bit more confident after that win. And I just don't see the same offensive fluidity for New York without Forsberg out with the foot injury. So I think this could be a tight game, low scoring game. Red Bulls are still super solid defensively. Montreal had some issues back there, but I think this could be tighter than most people think. I'm going to say Montreal get a point here with another draw for Draw FC. In Red Bulls, I say 1-1. Union hosting New England, 2 absolute bottom feeders in the East. But this is actually one of the matches to look out for, and it's not for the reasons you might think. Cavan Sullivan, a 14-year-old in the Union Academy system, who has been signed to and will go to Manchester City once he's 18. He's staying with the Union until then. 14-year-old. He's set to be in the matchday squad for this match. If he plays any minutes, he'll be the youngest player ever to feature in an MLS match, breaking Freddie Adu's record. And it's just crazy. I mean, obviously a top talent, and this is the perfect time, honestly, to include him, because it really can't get worse for the Union. They have 1 win in their last 17 matches. Like, they've played 23 matches. 1 win in the last 17, including another match where they dropped points completely in a winning position in that last Toronto loss. So Jim Curran confirmed he'll be in the squad. I obviously doubt he starts, but for him to get any minutes at all, I would say is likely at this point. Curtin's been raving about him. And this might be another game that has weather issues as well, though. So look out for that. But I see the Union scraping by on this one somehow. I'm trusting them again. And partially also because the Revs have their own players out still. It's still very questionable with Hill. He's been out for four games now. Barrero as well. Boateng. So they're missing their key players, and Vrioni's really been stepping up. I think he's scored in like his last 6 games, or 6 out of 7 or something. He's really been the only player, stepping up. If Hill was there, the attack would be definitely clicking a little bit more. But Philly's last win actually came against the Revs. So Jim Curtin also said Andre Blake is back, their number 1 goalkeeper option. That's huge for them. They've been rotating between Rick and Semle. And obviously, they've gotten a couple players back from Copa America, such as Bueno. They've got a couple players going out for the Olympics, such as McGlynn, Harriel. So it's a mixed bag, but I think they definitely have the stronger squad here. And Martinez might feature. I don't know what the complete situation is there, but he didn't play last match. And there would definitely be a huge boost to have him back in that defensive midfield role. So look out for Cavan Sullivan's debut potentially in what could be another, ugly game weather-wise. But I see the Union scraping this one out. I'm going to go 2-1 Union, just like it was. Similar result, 3-0 when they won on the road to the Revs. We got a Texas Derby here with Dallas taking on Austin. Dallas gets to stay home after beating the Galaxy 2-0. They've now won 4 of their last 5 home matches, even with Ferreira out and Delgado out for weeks now, and maybe another couple weeks. They've been floating along, even though they're 11th, but they've been floating along. Peter Musa's absolutely on fire. What a signing for them. It's just the pieces around him have to remain healthy, number 1, and maybe get a couple upgrades. But form is kind of taken out of the window with these kinds of matches, right? And the thing is, both these teams have played each other twice already this season. In both games, the home team won 2-1. They've each won 2-1, and that's the third game. So for all the marbles basically. And listen, Austin's road form has been woeful. Only one win in their last 5, 3 losses in that same span. Their tactical setup is completely different when they go on the road. Obviously, they like to be much more conservative, but in a derby like this, we'll see really what happens. It's obviously in state, so it's not like Austin has to travel far after being at home. But I like Dallas's chances a little bit more here. I could see a draw. Actually, I am going to go with the draw. I don't see either of these teams pulling away. Both their defenses are in that kind of bottom third. Austin even worse, though. I think if one pulls this off, it could be Dallas being at home, their form there, and just Musa just stepping up and taking a chance. He's been really, really calm in front of net. One of the calmest finishers I've seen in a while in the league. So if anyone wins, it's Dallas, but I'm going to stick to a 1-1 draw here. Here we got our only cross-conference matchup of the entire slate. We have Minnesota hosting DC. Minnesota picked up a really crucial point in terms of the situation they're in. A really crucial point on the road against Dynamo. They let the 3 points slip away because they took that lead, but still a good point against a tough Dynamo team. And before that, they were 6 losses in a row. They're still 8 winless, but good to at least get a draw on the road. And DC, on the other hand, they were winless in their last 11 before past weekend, but they came from behind to beat Nashville at home 2-1. So their own big 3 points there. But neither of these teams obviously in the best form. Minnesota more so because of the players they're missing, and they're attacking, how clinical they've been. Their top players have been out. That's been most of the reason why they've had such a fall off from being, I think it was like 4th, about a month and a half ago. But yeah, these players should be back though. Oluse, St. Clair, both on Canada. Oluse was going to be a big boost if he can go for this one. Obviously, Canada had their 3rd place match on Saturday, so we'll see if he makes the squad here. And St. Clair as well. Those would be 2 huge boosts. And as your top striker and your top goalkeeper option, that means a lot in MLS. And on the other hand, DC is going to be basically full strength for their standards. Obviously, they have a couple defenders out for the year. That's just going to renote that. But obviously, good to get those 3 points. But once again, their road form has been really bad as well. 4 losses in their last 5. They, both these defenses are really suspect, but I think Minnesota being at home here is definitely an advantage. And especially if they get these players back, I'd definitely favor them to. They definitely have a better defensive structure, better system. I trust their players a little bit more, but Benteke can take over as well anytime. But I'm going to lean on the fact that Minnesota gets these players back, and I'm going to go for a 2-1 result, edged by DC, and get their first win in 9 games. Nashville hosting Orlando. Nashville 9th against Orlando 7th in the East. Both these teams on different paths right now. Nashville 4 losses in a row, including choking that lead to DC United and dropping all 3 points. Meanwhile, Orlando really picking up steam here. They were basically bottom in the East a couple weeks ago, and now they're already up to 7th. Crazy what 4 wins in 5 games can do for you, and just one simple run, because the bottom half of the East is really, really tight right now. And they've really been trying to separate themselves. They've been really successful. They've been playing some other bottom feeders as well. Those 4 wins were against the Fire, against Toronto, against DC, and then their most previous against New England. So still, you're beating who is in front of you. You're beating who you should be beating if you want to at least make a scratch at those final playoff spots. And give it up for Facundo Torres. He literally always turns it up in the summer months, and he got 2 goals last game, 2 beautiful finishes into the bottom left posts, and yeah, they're flying right now. They have to keep traveling though, obviously, after that New England trip. Nashville went to DC. They come back home here, and they've had a mixed bag of results, but they could be getting a couple players back. Schaffelberg done with Canada now. That would be a huge boost for their wing play. And Godoy and Leal, I don't know exactly their status here, but they were training out of that DC game. They didn't go, but it's worth monitoring their statuses, because those are two key midfielders who just raised the floor of this team at the very least. So Anunga is going to be suspended for this one. Meanwhile, obviously they're missing Zimmerman with the Olympic squad, so I think this is another toss-up here. Nashville likes to play these low-scoring games. The past couple matches between these teams have been low-scoring, but Orlando has definitely cleaned it up defensively a little bit more, and their attackers are waking up even with Duncan McGuire gone for the Olympics. So I'm going to lean for a draw here, though. I'm going to say Orlando get another valuable point, and Nashville continue their winless run. I'm going to say 1-1 here in another potentially rainy game. Galaxy hosting Rapids. It's 3rd and 4th in the West. This is a really eye-catching matchup, but it could be even better if it weren't for some of the players that are going to be out for this one. Jovic, questionable. He missed the last game, hamstring injury, and Vanny kind of alluded to the fact that he's probably going to miss this game and the next, just all the games up to Leagues Cup, and just have him ready for that. So I doubt he goes here. So we might get Miguel Berry. We might get another experiment with Paintsel at the 9, but Galaxy still haven't lost at home this season. They've won their last 5 in a row there. And Rapids, on the other hand, even though they lost 4 of their last 5 road games, they've made them competitive, and they've been able to score in a lot of them. They have some of the best attacking numbers on the road, so that's a good sign. But the problem is that Mihailovic has been out now for a game, and he's going to continue to be out with the Olympic squad. Calvin Harris was out last game, one of their younger midfielders who had a multi-goal game a couple weeks ago, and then Fernandez got injured late in that Red Bulls game. Coach said it was sort of a small knock, but probably enough to keep him out of this one, I would imagine, since it's such a short turnaround. And it's really whether Bombito, basically their best defender, really young prospect who's already getting looks for Europe now after a really impressive Copa America with Canada. It's really also notable whether he comes back for this game. Obviously the tournament's done, but we'll see if he's included in the squad with such turnaround as well. That would be a huge boost for them. This is still going to be a really, I think, high entertaining game, because a lot of these stars are still playing, such as Puig, Peck, Paintsel for Galaxy, Navarro, Bassett, and others for Rapids. But it could be even better. I think this should still be a banger. I'm gonna say though that the Galaxy slip up a little bit here. They just lost to Dallas 2-0, like we talked about. Have to come back to home. A bit of a travel there, just coming back. But I'm gonna say the Rapids keep this one entertaining. Galaxy defense isn't the most convincing. I'm gonna go 2-2 draw here in Carson. San Jose hosting Houston. San Jose remains bottom of the West after losing to second bottom of the West, Kansas City, at home. They lost 2-1. Disappointing result for them, all things considered, because they had just beaten the Fire. They were looking, obviously, a win's huge for them because of just how bad they've been, but really would have liked to at least get a point in that matchup, because that's basically the only team as bad as you. And Kansas City was coming off that Open Cup even more congested schedule, so disappointing there. But yeah, Houston on the other end, they drew to Minnesota last weekend, and before that, they've still been flying. I mean, this team is really solid front to back. It's really just the front that's been the question over the past couple seasons as they've improved. Ferreira's been stepping up and doing a good job. Now they have Ponce coming in the transfer window. He'll be eligible to play this coming weekend, but not for this game. This is a really solid team. They with that addition, I mean, I think they just step up a level, just having a general better striker up there. And they're really healthy right now as well. So they have one of the most possession-based stats and setups in the league. They love to have possession. San Jose has some of the least. So it's going to be a game of where they're kind of comfortable or used to. And in the last fixture, San Jose could have walked away with at least a point, but they choked. They got a couple of red cards, and that's just been the story of their season. It's hard to imagine the Quakes winning here, but they have had 3 straight now, including this one, home games. Dynamo will have to travel a little bit to the West Coast, so that could be a factor, but it's hard to trust the Quakes keeping them out. But I do see goals in this one. But this matchup has had a lot of goals recently in past previous matchups. So I think Dynamo will walk away with the win here, but I think San Jose will have something to say about it, despite Dynamo's improved, really, really good defense. But I think the travel will take its toll here and have them slip up. I'm going to say 3-2 Dynamo in a low-key kind of electric game. The Sounders get to host St. Louis, and in this previous match earlier this season, the Sounders won 2-1 to St. Louis. They kept them at bay and then really stole all the 3 points late. And like we mentioned at the start of the video, the Sounders are just absolutely flying. 5 wins in a row now, 6 wins in the last 7. That other result was a draw, so 7 unbeaten and 4 in a row at home. And the Sounders have beaten St. Louis in all 3 matchups they've played since St. Louis came into the league last year. So it's hard to not like the Sounders here. They've been getting healthy. De La Vega, their young star, just played his first 45 after a couple 5-10 minute features in the previous games. So you assume he goes here or gets another at least 45, and that just helps with their creativity because he's shown those flashes in his limited time. And they just went to Austin after that midweek Open Cup game and bunkered down, got a grindy 1-0 result. Meanwhile, St. Louis, they beat San Jose, the worst team in the league. And after that, back-to-back 4-1 losses to the Rapids and Vancouver. The defense is just pretty much as abysmal as San Jose's. The attacking options haven't come through yet. Jacques Klaus, even though he's been really not on the same level as last year and unimpressive, he's also just been injured recently. So add to that injury list to the ones they have out for the year. Everything is just kind of falling apart as it stands right now. It just remains to be seen how different or even consistent they're going to look with these couple players coming in from Germany and such. Maybe possibly obviously for the next game once the transfer window opens, but it's hard to see. They have to travel here as well. This should honestly just be a pretty straightforward Sounders win. Their defense has been very respectable as well. And St. Louis, even though they are okay at creating chances, they just don't have the quality to finish them as their lineup currently stands. So I think Sounders keep a clean sheet in this one. Honestly, I'm going to go for a 2-0 Sounders win, and they get 6 wins in a row to continue this great revival. The Whitecaps are hosting Kansas City in this one. Kansas City moved up 1 spot, and after beating San Jose, now they're above only San Jose and St. Louis because St. Louis has just been so poor. But anyways, Vancouver really bouncing back as well. One of those Cascadia teams, really been impressive in the past month. 4 wins in the last 5. All comps, 3 wins in the last 4 though. MLS, 2 of those were against St. Louis. So, I mean, take it with a grain of salt, but it's good to see in general just Brian White and Ryan Gauld really clicking again, because White specifically was just not in his goal-scoring form as he was last season. And he has 7 goals in his last 4 MLS games. Obviously, 2 of those include a hat-trick at home to St. Louis, and then 2 goals this past weekend to St. Louis. But then 1 goal in his other 2 games besides that. And, it's still really good for his confidence, for the whole team's confidence. A lot of these midfield players are back that are crucial to their system from these Copa America runs, and that's just only going to help them. They get to play another weak Western team in Kansas City. Kansas City, 3 wins in a row now on the bounce, 3 in their last 4 MLS games. They beat Dallas back-to-back in MLS play and then an Open Cup play, and then they obviously just beat San Jose on the road. So, impressive for both teams. They're just good signs for both teams, right? But they are beating up on just really who they should be beating up on, at least, are some of the worst teams in the entire league, and especially the West. So Vancouver, though, obviously, just in general, I expect them to be one of those top 5 or so teams in the West when all was said and done. And they started off really hot, and they went on a really bad run, and the offensive ideas really ran dry for a while there. But it's good to see these players coming back from these tournaments, and that this front, these 2 stars of theirs, right, or whatever you want to call them, their main 2 attackers in Gauld and White, really clicking, because that's going to be crucial if they want to be considered one of those upper Western teams and squeak out for one of those home playoff spots. So I think Whitecaps should have no problem handling this Kansas City team, and I'm going to go for a 2-0 win at BC Place. Man, this game truly could have been great. This is a rematch of the blizzard, snowy game from the first week or 2 of the season where RSL beat LAFC 3-0. And Steve Cherundolo, who's known for his funny and just kind of like, okay, like type of excuses whenever some sort of thing doesn't pan out the way it's supposed to in terms of like weather or scheduling or whatever. He was complaining after that game, and I know he's going to take this one personally. And this is first or second in the West. Both these teams coming off losses, like we talked about in the early section of the show, and it could have been great. And I hope it still is great. But we have so many players out here, so many crucial players out here. We have Murillo and Palencia, 2 key defenders for LAFC, who have really picked it up and been one of those top teams defensively this season to help LAFC go on this amazing run. But they each got red cards in that embarrassment of a game against Columbus, so they're suspended for this one. Oliveira might be coming back from Uruguay play, but on the other end, we have to talk about RSL and Chicho Arango. He's been suspended now for 4 games for violating the anti-harassment policy, and they haven't really explained what he did. There really hasn't been an explanation. RSL came out with their own statement, and it wasn't really like going against that or saying they disagree with it. So he's been suspended for 4 games, and that includes the All-Star game, which he got selected to because he's obviously leading the Golden Boot. And that's its own insane decision, because you're just leaving one of your star players out of the All-Star game. So I don't know what. Obviously, no one really knows what happened, but it must be something bad. The amount of games, it just remains to be seen. You know, we can't really completely react to this until we find out what happens, if we ever do, or what happened. And yeah, so that's obviously a big loss for them. And then Gomez as well got suspended for getting his own yellow card. He's on yellow card suspension, so that leaves 2 of their top attackers out. You know, LAFC gets to stay at home, and their attack has been clicking outside of this Columbus game they just suffered that loss in. But they're going to have a couple of key defenders out. It's just, if RSL was full strength, they could really attack that and you know, maybe get the double over LAFC, but it's hard to imagine them doing that here, especially with how bad they've looked defensively now. That's all it's just snowballed. Not to make reference to that other game, but it's snowballed now with Justin Glad being out, how much they miss him. So I think LAFC gets the revenge here, honestly. Besides that crew loss, they've really not suffered many. They haven't lost many points at home in general. So if everyone's full strength offensively, I think they could overcome these couple of defensive suspensions, and I think they get the job done. I think it's a high scoring game, though. I think 3-1 to LAFC. In other MLS related news, we got a really cool MLS retro kit drop collaboration between MLS and Adidas. They took full charge of this, and yeah, it's just paying homage to some of these original teams and past teams in early MLS days and in the leagues that came before it. And it's just beautiful. I mean, we got the Galaxy, Kansas City, Timbers, and then those are some old, obviously more original, older teams. And they have some inspiration to draw off these jerseys because these teams they had similar type of jerseys back then. And so that's like the design inspiration behind those. But then we have like LAFC and Miami, who, you know, respectfully, like, they are two of the biggest teams in the league, so I understand it, but they don't. These are not drawing off any like history. It's just kind of like the themes of their cities and stuff, especially for the colors of Miami. But obviously, you know, they were just they still look really good. It's just not. It just doesn't like hit the same for me personally. But yeah, overall they're all beautiful jerseys. I hope more get done, more collaborations, especially for some of these older original MLS teams who had some really fire jerseys, you know, back in the day. And yeah, it's more than just these jerseys as well. You can check them out and buy these, but there's also like hoodies, hats, scarves, and other stuff, and it's just really, really cool. I definitely got to get myself that Galaxy one. I think objectively the Kansas City one is like the best one among like MLS fans, but me personally, I love that Galaxy one. The picture's not really doing it justice, but I really, really like that one. I think my personal order is literally how they're lined up, but they're all really beautiful. Go check those out. I think it's just really cool news to talk about. And yeah, I just hope more teams get this along the line, and I hope these teams get to wear them, because the only reason I would see them not wearing them is because of the sponsor stuff. Most of their main jerseys obviously have sponsors on the front, and where those sponsors would be is like just their names and the team names. So they're obviously going to have like the sleeve sponsors such as like Apple TV and stuff like normally, but I just hope that they are allowed to actually wear these in game and it just not be a drop for the fans, which is obviously still cool. But I would love to see these being worn in game, and I hope that we get that possibility. So yeah, hopefully more teams also get the chance to have some cool throwback jerseys. Thanks for tuning in and watching the video again, guys. I really hope you enjoyed the content, and I just wanted to really say how appreciative I am of the love you guys have been showing on the past couple of videos. It's just been absolutely amazing. I really appreciate it, and I just hope to keep providing this type of content for you guys, keep getting better quality. And yeah, it's been a really fun past couple weeks, and I just really appreciate it. So thank you. And just another side note, I didn't talk about any betting aspects in this video, mostly due to the rotation, the short rest. So once again, you guys kind of know the drill by now, but just wanted to mention that if there will be bets, which I'm sure there will be, I'm going to wait for the Wednesday slate and the day of, and just wait for lineups, because there's really a lot of potential rotation, and especially this match week with the really bad weather. There's been thunderstorms and stuff moving across the US as a whole, and it looks like it's just moving to like Midwest and East now, and a lot of games are probably going to be affected. So it's really hard to get a read on them right now, and we just kind of have to wait till around game time to see just how bad that weather is, and obviously who all is really going to play, and how much rotation there will be. So just look out for that on my Twitter at MLS Digest. Make sure to follow that for those, and just general news, discussion, and anything else related to MLS. So once again, thanks for watching the video, guys, and I'll see you for the upcoming match week 27.